Bicycle and Pedestrian Street Safety Commission, recorded November 19, 2020.
Cool. So I'll call this meeting to order at 3:01. And first, we'll start with roll call. Commissioner O'Mara.
Here.
Commissioner Finn. Yeah.
I am here.
Commissioner Leek.
Here.
And Commissioner Brown.
Here.
And Commissioner Fehrenbach.
He is excused.
He is excused. Okay. Gotcha. Thank you, Adam. Okay. So let's see. I got to pull up a document here. Just for a moment, please bear with me. Okay, so before proceeding, I'd like to make a motion. We had a request by an alder to bump up item number 9, the discussion on bicycle and driver education. And I move that we change the agenda item order so the item number 9 becomes the new item number 5. Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Okay, Commissioner O'Mara. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hey.
Or raise your hand, either one. Looks like we had unanimous vote. Okay, cool. So we'll shift that to be item number 5 then, bicycle and driver education. Thank you. All right, item 2, non-agenda items. Okay, so if persons who wish to address the commission for up to 3 minutes for any item that they want, as long as it's not on the agenda. And we'll look for, since we're on Zoom here, we'll look for people either unmuting themselves or raising their hands. So I guess, Adam, if you're able to help me with that, just in case I miss somebody.
I don't see anybody offhand, Trevor, our chair work.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. So we will then move on to item 3, discussion possible action on the following. Item 3, report of the September 10th, 2020 meeting of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Street Safety Commission. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Commissioner O'Mara, is there a second?
Leak here, I'll second it.
Alder Leek, okay. Is there discussion on the minutes? Any hands raised or unmutes go on here? I'm not seeing anything. Okay, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Or hand raised. Yep, there we go. Looks like it's unanimous. The motion has carried. Okay, moving on to item 4. Request to include documents relating to the August 20th, 2020 walking rolling audit in the August 20th, 2020 Bicycle and Pedestrian Street Safety Commission minutes. So for the first link, which is included in the packet, is the actual scan copies of the notes taken during the walking rolling audit. And I do apologize, it's my fault that these didn't get included earlier. Just kind of fell off my list of things to do. And I think we do need maybe quick clarification from staff before a motion is made. If it's acceptable to include the second link, which is the October City Council meeting presentation, or if that's necessary at all. Because that wouldn't really be part of the August 20th meeting.
Well, that presentation was based on the findings of the August meeting, correct?
Right, it summarizes and points out certain things, yep.
Yeah, I think in general, you could include that as part of the motion.
Okay, Thank you. Is there a motion to approve? Yes, I will motion unless someone else raised their hand. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Hey, Commissioner Fairbach, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Live from Oklahoma City.
What's that? Oklahoma City. All right.
The Trevor,
Cool.
Yeah.
I want to say hi.
Amy says hi. Sorry.
Oh, hey, Jamie, how are you doing? All right, we'll keep staying official here. Any discussion on that approval of those minutes? Or excuse me, of those documents? See none, so all in favor to approve, say aye.
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 Okay. Looked like it was unanimous. Okay, motion carries. Great. All right. I don't know, Adam, if you're able to, you have control of the presentation by chance, if you're able to motion down to this slide.
All right. You should see item number 5 now, hopefully.
No.
No, it's just the cover page so far.
I think I know what.
What are you doing?
All right. Hopefully
Okay.
now.
So we actually, sorry, just to confuse you, we ended up switching the order. So we're jumping to item 9. Currently listed as 9, but it's jumping to 5. Just want to test you, Adam, that's all. All right, so discussion on bicycle and driver education. Cool. Okay, so start off by saying, I had a memo included in the packet. If you saw where that was located, I can just point it out in case you're maybe a resident or just following along and haven't seen the agenda yet. Let's see, chair memo. So it is actually under item 9 itself on the online agenda. It's the link that says BPSSC agenda 19th of November 2020 chair memo. So in that memo, I had mentioned it's evident that our commission needs to take a stronger role with public education surrounding the use of bicycles and driving while nearby bicyclists. This evidence comes from residents continually spreading myths that I read or hear about, things about the rules of the road, rights and responsibilities for bicyclists, pedestrians even, funding, etc. So education is a small part of the Bikepad plan, also known as the Portage County Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. Is a small part, but there's important recommendations we should really follow through on. And there might be other possible strategies and resources we could discuss. Some things in the plan include hosting bike rodeos on page 41 of the plan. It'd be nice to know what the police department is doing currently. I know they have hosted them in the past. What schools are hosting them? Another possible component is including annual mailings along with utility or tax bills. That's also on page 41 of the Bikepad plan. There's also offering bicycle and pedestrian education courses as an alternative for first-time minor offenses of bicycle and pedestrian related rules of the road. That's on page 42. Like I mentioned, it's possible to add more online resources or other strategies that we can come up with, and they might not be included in the plan. However, it'd be ideal to try to get those listed in the plan done first or recommended first. So I'd like to start this off with a discussion, maybe with things that you are hearing from residents about bicycling in Stevens Point, driving near maybe even the new TAP grant bicycle facilities, also shortened as bike lanes. Rules of the road, maybe things you've experienced with current educational efforts, etc. So I think after that, we could discuss some strategies maybe and concerns. And then by the end of our discussion, I think 1 to 2 commissioners should volunteer to take the lead on these efforts. I apologize, I won't be able to lead on this specifically. I'm not able to allocate time right now. But with that, we'll start with some discussion. So if anyone wants to volunteer.
Well,
to-
I have something.
Sure, that'd be great. Commissioner Brown?
For the TAP grant and the new lines that we have, some people are very confused about how to use those. And like when you come towards an intersection with the staggered lines. And I think it might be good to go to the schools and explain to the children, to different classes, how those are used. And also maybe do some general education on that. There's a lot of people are used to them, but there's a lot of people that aren't, and we want to have more usage of it. So I think if we go out and do some education around that, it would be good.
Yeah, that's a great point. Directly related, when I was looking at the Safe Routes to School plan, we have adopted as well. There's a recommendation in there for specific schools. I think it's the high schools that host drivers education to include bicycle and driver training on bicycling and pedestrian use. So it's there. It's really one of those things we need to formalize. So yeah, great point. Did you have additional items, Kathy, or any
That's
other
it.
commissioners?
I would suggest that
Yep, Feuerbach?
this may sound like a fine point, but really you can't really ignore it anymore. The difference between a bike lane and an urban shoulder,
Sure.
specifically as it relates to residents and parking. Along Jefferson Street, you can park in that, and people do park in that, and that's legal because it's just an urban shoulder at that point. But other places, clearly you can't park in the bike lane. And I think that, again, is a big education component that people need to understand the difference between those two.
Yeah, great point. 2 things about it. Director Badoon, if you're available, I'm assuming that all the signage is up and running from the TAP grant. So any new bike lanes have no parking signs, and urban shoulders parking is allowed. Is that correct?
That would be correct. All the signage has been updated and is up.
Okay, so I imagine there's certain other strategies you're thinking of, Bill. Could be in image form, having a side-by-side of here's a bike lane, here's an urban shoulder, here's what this does, here's what this does. Can you park here? Can you not park here? I could totally see that. Yeah. Did you have more ideas or suggestions, Commissioner Feuerbach?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right. Commissioner, Amira, it looks like he's raising his hand. Oh, go ahead.
The mayor just posted a little deal with some Girl Scouts asking Bike Officer Ben about bicycling. It was pretty good, except Officer Ben doesn't know how to wear his mask yet, but other than that, it was quite good. But I think that we have to look for opportunities to give these, to spread the word. People, for the most part, are not going to sit down and go through a half hour or an hour presentation. And that one was about the right length. I think it was like 2 minutes, but it was informative.
Right.
And I think that that's what we have to do. And it's probably not as satisfying And we really need to have the police department, the mayor's office, and I think some sort of liaison with the school district and the private and parochial schools to talk about it, because I think that's where it's going to go. I think insofar as educating the elderly and adult public, other than PSAs, we really don't have a good way to do it.
And yeah, very good points. And as you kind of hinted at as well, right now it's even harder because sometimes in person is the best for some of those contexts. Thanks, Commissioner Mara. Did you have any
Yes,
other
I
ideas?
did.
Or?
I have
Okay.
heard, and I think we just have to get pushback from our elected officials. Why are we spending any money on pedestrian or bicycle? Cars pay taxes. And a real minority of the funds that go for our city streets comes from gasoline taxes.
Right.
It comes from ad valorem taxes that everybody pays. And I think we have to stress that.
Good point. I think it's Commissioner Finn. Did you raise your hand? Yep.
Yes, just one of them was commenting on what Commissioner O'Meara was saying about the little spot that the mayor had, and I thought that was a good idea too, even if you just do little sound bites. I think there are a fair amount of people that see those videos, and you know, those are great too. But I also wanted to share an experience that I had a few weeks ago with a biker along Main Street, and I was on Main Street and we were coming to the intersection with Michigan Avenue, and I've only ridden on, or it was Clark, sorry. I've only ridden on Main Street one time with my bike, and I actually felt, you know, quite protected knowing I was in that bike lane. But he was on Clark Street in the bike lane, and then we came to the intersection, and the dotted line, of course, is meant to catch your eye to tell you that there might be bikes waiting there, and telling the bikes that there might be cars coming at the same time you are. And so I just, you know, wasn't sure what he was going to do, but he was a knowledgeable biker, and he put his hand out that he was going to be turning left, and then when the light turned, I stayed behind him as if he were a car in front of me. It all was, yes, the paint helped me be more aware, but it also was quite intuitive, what we were supposed to do on especially a busy street when there's a bike and a car and you're reaching an intersection. So he turned right and I turned right, and there we were in our cozy lanes. It felt good. And that was, yes, I'm aware of the paint, but that was the first time I actually experienced it and felt what it was like for both a biker and a driver to do when you got to the intersection. Just wanted to share that.
Cool, thanks for sharing. Did you have any other thoughts or ideas, Commissioner Finn?
Not at this moment.
Okay, any other commissioners? Ideas, thoughts, strategies, concerns? Okay, we have a couple alders in the audience that have raised their hand. Alder Jennings, you have a suggestion?
Yeah, thank you. Great comments from the commissioners. I really love Commissioner Finn's comments. That's the whole point, right? It's telling where people to be in the road, however you're getting around. I wanted to follow up a little bit on, or touch on Commissioner O'Meara's comments, because I hadn't really thought about it, but it relates to the flashcards that they're using for Business 51. Just a flashcard that gives a quick education about some aspect of Business 51. But I see what he's saying, and it's like the city is not doing very much to provide education in a straightforward, simple way. And it seems like that flashcard approach could work with these little messages about road safety and share and be aware, sharing the road. So maybe that's something that you might think about. And then I just have kind of a crazy idea. What I notice when I talk with people who are, you know, they're not used to riding on the road, they're not accustomed to that, and they don't have confidence in it. And we talk about bike rodeos for kids, but we don't talk about anything similar for that for adults.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there's any way to do like small group rides where we take people on a ride on, you know, experience the roadway to give people more confidence. Because I know people who love to ride bikes and they're riding on the sidewalk because they're too afraid to be on the road. And how do we build their confidence? And I'm just wondering if there's a bike rodeo way to do that for adults. So crazy idea, I know, but just wanted to throw it out there.
Thank you. Just to not pivot off that, but add to that, it actually in the Bikepad plan for the county, it actually separates 2 bike rodeo recommendations, one's for children, one's for adults. So that's currently a recommendation. Specifically in the adults one, it mentions offering it through the Life is Forever, the LIFE program at the university. So that could be a potential venue for in person, you know, when it's safe again, or maybe there's a, you know, some sort of evolved online version currently that could be developed.
I think that could be one
Yep.
way, but the LIFE program, of which I am a member, is mainly retired people. Not that we don't bike, but I don't think we should consider that a main way
Sure.
of educating people. Just a
Yep.
way.
Yeah, good way to target retired and
Yeah.
and those that are part of that program. Yep, good point. Yep. Commissioner Fehrenbach? Sorry, there's a bunch of hands going up.
So I know the university did have a program in the, when was that? It was a few months back where they were recruiting people to lead students on rides around town just to familiarize themselves with where things are by bicycle in town. And so hearing Alder Jennings' idea of, can you plan a ride for adults? I think it's a great idea. Because, you know, I'll say this, you know, I ride the streets a lot and I'm comfortable and confident, but I'll tell you, since the paint is on the roads now, it is so much better. And I sense that cars are so much more respectful and they will hold their distance and back. There are times I have to wave people to say, no, you should pass me now. This is a good spot for you to pass. But so many people are very, very respectful and in fact, very slow to pass. And so there is a lot of respect out there, but there's a lot of education that can still happen. But honestly, safety on the streets is much improved by all the paint. And I think we need to get more people on the streets.
Thank you, Commissioner Fehrenbach. Commissioner O'Meara?
You know, Great Britain has a program of teaching adults to cycle. But the secret is they don't tell them that's what they're doing. They do things like you're taking people for the tour of downtown, and while you are doing that, you're demonstrating and instructing safe cycling, because people don't want to really go for the safe cycling deal, but they wouldn't mind going for that or looking at historic houses or something like that. And that is a way to do it, because it seems kind of dull to go on a bike safety ride, except for the true believers, but to go up for another reason. And that would just go to, we do have people taking people for rides, and get them to say, what do you want to instruct them? And different age groups, they try to instruct different things. If you're instructing elementary school children, what they teach them how to do is how to enter the street and how to make a left and right turn. That's all they teach them. But that gives them quite a bit of more safety.
Right.
And so I think that we have to be imaginative about this, but I think that perhaps getting some something together for people who might be taking these bike rides is what are the messages we want to convey would help them be better and would get the education out, because we don't really care if we get credit for it. We just want it done.
Yeah, great points. Commissioner Brown?
The Point Area Bicycle Shop, they tend to do rides, and it might be that we can talk to them and have them mirror good behavior or bicycling, and sort of like how Commissioner O'Meara said, but just talk to them. They're very approachable.
I would concur.
Yep. Just a quick note on that. They've been doing group rides for years, but this year they pulled back because of COVID. So definitely, I think next spring, summer, we should approach them again. I think Alder Johnson, you had some comments or feedback?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for all the comments. A couple of things kind of building off of what everybody's talking about. I think first and foremost, I think there needs to be a comprehensive plan, not sort of, I think taking all of the ideas and putting them into a plan. And I think that plan needs to be branded of sorts, that it's Stevens Point's, bicycle pedestrian safety education plans. I don't, that's too long, but my friends in marketing and branding would probably come up with something a little bit better than that, because it has to be buzzy, it has to be fun, it has to be interesting, and it has to be engaging for not just cyclists but also drivers, because part of what we're doing, or I hope we are doing, is educating drivers as well, right, of vehicles, because they, I think the criticism that you see online, the anti-bike lanes, anti-bicyclists, I think some of it is a fear, because they're afraid, they don't want to hit bicyclists. And so when they see the bicyclists on the road, there's this little bit of fear of, okay, where do I go? What do I do? So they too have that hesitation. I don't think there may be maybe like 0.1% are going, boy, I'd like to bump off a couple of bicyclists, and those people are very, very bad. But I think for the most part, there's confusion by bicyclists just trying to figure out how to use the proper rules of the road with your bicycle. And then, of course, the drivers. So this has to be comprehensive, and that's why you want to bring in everybody into this. And because I have a tendency to be lazy, I like looking to what other communities have done, particularly larger communities or even smaller communities that have fun, engaging educational outreach programs that offer incentives and make this a bit of a game rather than a duty. And to that end, my question, and this is something I'd be happy to bring back to Finance Committee as chair of Finance Committee, do we need a budget for this? Do we need a budget to bring in the right kind of people who, and all of you are great, but I mean, educators who know how to take what we want to do and be able to translate it into messages for, very young people, some, middle-aged people, and then even some of us older people. How do we translate ideas into education so that they can be synthesized by our brains that are busy with so many other things? So what sort of resources would this committee need? And then I'd have to fight with all the department heads to figure out where I grab all that money from. And I know Scott and Ryan are probably going, not again.
No.
But I don't see this being incredibly expensive. But to do this right, and I'm assuming the city of Stevens Point wants to do this right. We've invested this much time and energy into making ourselves a welcoming place for multimodal transportation. We should also invest in the next phase.
And again, I don't think it's going to be a lot because we have a great commission with great ideas. We may need additional resources when it comes to outreach. Do we need print material? Do we, have a fund for incentives that, the police department can hand out to people following the rules of the road properly, or whatever those can be. So those are my questions to you. And then I've got to head off to another committee meeting. But I love the conversation. I love the ideas. I think we can learn from other locations. And Tori just put in their Bike Federation. But it should be comprehensive. And then we should, once we've got that framework, let's pull in the partners and see if we can make this just outstanding, stellar opportunity for Stephen's point, and make us raise us even higher as that welcoming community for folks who want to use all types of transportation systems. So that's all I have to say, and that was a lot.
Thank you, President Johnson. Thank you for that push, that little nudge. I like that. I say budget, yes.
I do like to push ever so slightly.
Oh, there you go. A little nudge. Budget, yes. Plan, I'm not totally certain. What if, just thinking out loud here, could it look more like the commission, whoever takes lead on this, compiles what's already been done? So basically there's recommendations from the Bikepad plan, safe routes to schools, and that's a really good start, I think. And then tying in, like Alder Jennings said, the Wisconsin Bike Federation. I know, Michelle Bacchus is available to communities in her region upon hire. So, if part of the budget is recommending, hey, let's spend money on this actual driver and bicyclist education course in the spring, then let's go for it. I almost think the budget could be mostly for implementation of a plan.
Yeah.
As opposed to developing a new, more comprehensive, robust plan. Although I do like that, I'm a little hesitant on moving forward with something bigger.
Well, it doesn't have to be huge. There are ways to do this. I think the other thing, and it gets back to the implementation of the TAP grant and the bike lanes and the urban shoulders. It was awesome. I love it. I ride them all the time. And I see people in them all the time. It warms my heart. It makes me so very happy. But we kind of said, here it is. And people went, ah. And so I think in some ways, there's an opportunity as this starts to build and we finally launch it is, sometimes you have to do the mea culpa. Maybe we got ahead of our skis. But we're going to fix that now. And we recognize that because we respect all users of the road, right? And now we're going to engage everybody for everyone's safety. So I think there's great opportunity, but I'm just really thrilled that you're having this discussion.
Thank you. Others from the audience regarding the discussion on bicycle or driver education?
I have an idea.
Yes, Carolyn.
For education, I was in a meeting yesterday with the Healthy Aging of Portage County, and we were discussing how to get the word out, and we were talking about doing like monthly, like 5 to 30-minute little talks, and then like pushing it on Facebook and do whatever. We haven't really talked about that, but I was thinking if somebody could get on and talk about it. I think biking is a healthy aging activity. It's healthy, and people of all ages can do it. So I think that might be a good way to get free advertising.
Right. You already have that in planning, you're saying, or you already implementing?
We've discussed it. We haven't implemented it yet, but we've discussed it, and to see how many people have things that we would like to do it, because we want to do only like one a month or something.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Great idea. Commissioner O'Meara. You're still muted, are you? Oh.
There's a great resource if you Google Wisconsin Department of Transportation bicycle safety. They in 2016 put together a comprehensive bicycle safety education program and what sort of things to be doing with it and assessment tools. And I think it's worthwhile to look at that to get some ideas, because a lot of the stuff you're talking about, they've already talked about in there. And they also talk about implementation.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Anyone else in the audience or staff have more ideas, thoughts, concerns? Okay. Now I'm going to end this item with hopefully a raised hand. Hopefully someone would be willing to take the lead on whatever this evolves into. So it could be smaller than we were talking about just now. It could be taking on different forms, but we definitely need someone to lead the effort. Come on, who's a taker? Commissioner Finn, Alder Leek, Commissioner O'Meara. We have no volunteers yet. Might have to draw straws.
It's
all right.
We'd have to give us time to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Maybe,
if you want.
Amongst ourselves too.
Let's do that.
Definitely intrigued, but at the same time, because it's so new and there are so many resources and so many ideas, I'd be willing to be one of them.
Ooh, that's a step in the right direction. Okay, so
maybe
why don't we give it time?
Later, thinking about it.
We've got one toe in the water, so we'll give it some time. If you want to just email me, if you're interested, or if you have more questions, feel free. That'd be awesome. Otherwise, we will discuss further down the road. Okay, cool. Great ideas. All right, Adam, if you can please jump back to, I think what's listed in item 5. Yes, okay. So I'll jump to my notes here. All right, so discussion on city sidewalk continuation plan. So at my last meeting with staff, I brought this item to the table, however, Director Badoon suggests we hold off on this discussion. Director Badoon, are we bringing anything to the table today, or did you still want to hold off?
Well, what I'd like to do is just update everybody kind of where we're at and what we're headed.
Okay.
I presented on this at the Board of Public Works meeting last week, and we are just about wrapping up our prioritization model. And I just got, in fact, another update today on it. There's a few things we still need to tweak. So my intentions are to continue working on that aspect of sidewalk continuation, and from there work over the winter on a more long-term plan to sidewalk continuation. So what I'm saying that is that there won't be, or I'm not planning for a construction project in 2021, but we'll put together the plan that we can roll out in 2021, so we can get people notified, not just in the next year, but in years ahead of what our intentions are. I think that will relieve several issues that we otherwise have with residents, especially when we work in those areas, as far as the justification for why we're using, working in those corridors and such versus other potential ones. Everyone seems to have an opinion of where sidewalks should go, and it's the last place we go is in my front yard. So it's going to help with that, as well as because we do assess for sidewalks. I feel it would be beneficial, because I know that's part of the reasons people have those feelings, is because there is a financial burden to them to do it. And I think it's only fair if we're going to continue. I think when this continuation program came on, the director at the time was Director Lemke, it wasn't necessarily his intention is to start this up as an annual program as much as it was just to, kind of as needed as projects developed, as certain whatever triggers may come up to do it. It seemed to have morphed into that because it definitely has the support, and I don't disagree with that in any way. But I think if we are going to continue with it, more so in an annual basis, we do need to take a step back and come up with a longer term plan. I think that's only fair to the people that we're dealing with. We definitely want to let people know kind of, what the chances are per se, as far as, sidewalk coming within an area. We want to give them an opportunity to talk to their alderperson and talk to the council, talk to, this commission and stuff, and express, whatever it is, whether they're the joy they have that they're getting sidewalks now, or just, their unhappiness that you're forcing this upon them. It seems to be those are the two emotions it otherwise gets there, and very little in between. But just to give them an opportunity so they feel they have a part of it. It seems that kind of working year to year, and as much as we try to get things out early, it doesn't always work with our workload. So I think taking this time off to get this plan put together is going to help us. I think we'll find a smoother process then on the other side when we start moving forward and implementing it, because we'll have given more notice to people. We'll have our justification for why. People will see their plan. Hopefully, the idea is to give them an opportunity to comment on that before it gets implemented. So, we won't get these, this is the first time I'm hearing of it, and why wasn't I told before, and why not over there, sorts of arguments that we've had the last few years. So I've otherwise said enough. If anyone has any questions or comments regarding that, I definitely, take those. But that's just to get everybody, updated on where we are. And I think just given the proximity with where we are with the model, it makes sense to pause now and finish that, put our energy for the winter into doing that, and then going from there.
Yeah, it sounds like a great strategy. Commissioner Leek?
I just wanted to confirm, make sure I understood correctly. You said in 2021 you're not planning, there are no plans for any continual construction or further construction projects. Did I get that right?
For just specifically for sidewalk continuation. Of course,
right. Well,
there's
yes,
going to be
yes.
other corrections.
Yeah.
In fact, there will be some sidewalk going in, new sidewalk going in as part of those projects.
Okay.
However, there just won't be a separate, as we've bid it out as a separate project, the sidewalk continuation project. There will not be a physical project in 2021.
Okay. So if it's another project that has, it has to do with tearing up streets and sidewalks temporarily, then of course new sidewalk goes in, but sidewalk continuation will be on pause.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Commissioner O'Meara?
I think the council has to take a long, hard look at their special assessment as it relates to sidewalks. The only person who wins when you don't put in a sidewalk when they plat a new subdivision is the subdivider, because having sidewalks or not having them does not affect the price of the lot. So what happens is you've given that money to the subdivider. Now the person who is stuck living in an area that doesn't have sidewalks, and perhaps because when their subdivision was platted, it was in one of the townships. Now they're looking at a big ticket bill. I think that what we should start looking at is that the city, when you're doing a strict continuation, not platting of new or a subdivision, that we pick up some percentage, maybe 50% of the continued sidewalk, so people know they're getting a deal and if the city is interested in it. But at the other hand is, we've decided to mandate that you help the whole community. I think the community has to step in there. And I think that we really should look at looking at the special assessment. When I took the federal training for sidewalks, they said that they thought that especially assessing sidewalks was an equity issue, in that the areas that need sidewalks the most are the lowest income areas, and are the ones that are where the people who live there are least able to afford it. So I think we really have to look at it. We also have to look at the special assessment on corner lots. I think that we may have to pick up to be fair, you live on a corner lot, because you're going to be shoveling that whole corner for the rest of the time it's in there, that you're only assessed for the frontage, not on the side. But I think that that's something we really have to look at, and I will have to discuss it with Melissa and other members of the council. But I think that this saying we're going to do a continuation program and we're going to assess it at 100%, I don't think that that is either equitable or politically viable.
Great points, Commissioner O'Meara. Thank you. Director Badun, quick question as far as process and changing the assessment as a possibility. Is that a process that would occur through finance and potentially through BPSSC, or just finance?
Really, it could start at anywhere. If it wanted to go from here, as it's been suggested, as something to take to finance, I mean, you definitely do that. I think ultimately, yeah, we would want to include finance in it because it does have a big component there. And I think the comptroller treasurer will definitely have to weigh in on what we're doing. That has been otherwise brought up. And I do believe, I can't speak for him, but I do believe that comptroller treasurer Laddick, would definitely be willing to sit down and talk with us. I think he has some ideas of his own. I think we would go that route through finance, would probably be the most appropriate. But we can definitely start those conversations. And given the lull in here is probably a great time to have that conversation. Because it'd be nice to include in our overall plan and how we're moving forward and what we're doing, including how are we going to finance, this plan,
right?
Which should be part of the report.
And I think that Scott, you definitely have to be part of that, so that it is a relatively straightforward way of implementing this plan, so that when you are deciding, when you're drawing up the special assessment orders, that there's no question as to what's going to happen. It has to be drafted such that you guys can follow it with ease.
Yes, I very much agree.
Thank you. Just one last note as it relates to the bicycle pedestrian plan that we're charged to implement, as well as the Safe Routes to School plan. There are a lot of sidewalk gaps that need filling. I know Scott, Director Badun's office has filled a bunch of those. However, there still are plenty of gaps. And I think this is a timely conversation to bring those two plans into the equation. Any other discussion or questions for the director? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 6, which is sort of item 7 because of our shift around. All right, discussion on 2021 street reconstruction timeline. So the streets reconstructed, the streets to be reconstructed have been narrowed down to the north side area between Madison School, Buckwell Park, MEJs, and the Stevens Point Area Co-op, as you can see in the map. More specifically, sections of 5th Avenue, Forest Street, West Street, First Street, and Buckwell Avenue. As mentioned previously, our commission had hosted a walking rolling audit this August for 2021 street reconstructions, basically this subject here tonight. However, those planned corridors are not exactly the same as what's now planned. So the overlap of streets we did walk and roll includes most of 5th and First. As I mentioned in my memo, which you can find under that bicycle and driver education agenda item linked, the commission looks forward to reviewing these typicals and design summaries, referring to that walking rolling audit, the Portage County Bikepad plan, Vision Zero policy, and Complete Streets resolution. I did forget to include the Safe Routes to School plan in that memo, but Director Badun did make note of that in every quarter design summary. It's awesome. In the agenda packet, the link includes a design summary and street cross-section typicals for all of the planned streets provided by Director Badun. So Director, did you want to take it from here?
I'll take really any questions. The only thing I want to just comment is exactly why, so everyone's at least aware of why things have changed since the rolling audit.
Okay.
And really, I think I kind of, lent to that for those that participated there, how much that this project was being driven by really utilities, and even said arguably, someone could probably come up with a road, more so than Fifth and First that, they felt might need, more attention. And I probably would have a difficult time arguing that. But looking at the entire corridor with both what's at the surface and what's beneath the surface, the utilities is kind of how we plan these out. And this one particularly has a large stormwater component to it. And although we had previously routed it along Portage and Smith, we found that the storm sewer we were trying to fit through there, we just won't fit through that corridor. There's just too many conflicts with other utilities and such. So we ended up having to kind of truncate a little bit and change our plans to do that. And ultimately there'll be some most likely future improvements yet out in Center Point for the way, but with some modeling as well, this seems that will alleviate, I believe, a good portion of the flooding that has historically occurred on the north side. And that's really the driving force for what we have here. Definitely the pavement is nearing its end of its useful life. But yeah, that stormwater component is what it is, and that's why it changed here at the end, once we finally got the last results as far as the conflict evaluation and the modeling for the storm sewer.
Okay, thank you for addressing that. Are there any questions from the commission regarding any of these streets, the design summaries or the cross-section typicals? Commissioner O'Meara?
I think it's really important that on those cross street, if you go back to the last one, West, Forest, they all run right into Madison School. And I think that it's going to be really important that we make sure that we don't leave those north-south streets orphaned, because they are safe routes to school, and you want to have real easy routes so children don't get lost on their way in.
Good points. Was there another hand that was popping up, or did you have more, Commissioner O'Meara?
No, I just think it's important that we provide pedestrian accommodation on those north-south links that run right into Madison School. And they also run up to Pacelli too, First Street does. And I think that we have to make sure that we maintain those north-south connections. Because some of those north-south stub streets in that neighborhood don't have sidewalks.
Right, and I think this reconstruction period, correct me if I'm wrong, Director Badoon, but every single recommendation plan so far looks like there's sidewalk included.
That is correct. The only area that we haven't fully decided, as you'll see there in the middle of the screen at the moment, is the First Street portion. That's the portion right next to MEJ's and such. And we're still trying to get a handle on what will happen there. There is sidewalk one side. We do intend to put sidewalk in on the other side. That part of it is completely driven by utilities. So I'm working with the utility office on that. And that's in words to say they're footing the bill for the entirety of the work to be included in there. And so we want to get into the design a little bit more to see if we will save the sidewalk in the curb gutter on the west side, and we can work just to the west. So we'll put sidewalk, install new sidewalk on the east side, and the other one will stay as it is. That will be the lower cost approach to do that. And the other one is to see if we do feel we need to, in the best interest of installation, tear up the entirety of the right of way. Well, then we'll see a slight tweak in this, because of course we always like to get some terrace space in there, if we can. So we might just slightly realign the roadway to do that. So there are still a couple of questions yet to be answered regarding to that, but that will come out as we move, for these probably the next few weeks of design, now that we have an engineer under contract to assist us with the final design. But yes, to answer your question, yeah, everything is getting sidewalk. If it doesn't have it, it's getting it. If it does have it, we're replacing it, of course.
Great. Regarding that specific typical on First Street, between Water Street and Portage. You know, if we were to think about like the long-term plans for the city to make either all the one-ways into two-ways or a lot of them downtown, is this a potential small fraction of corridor that could benefit from a two-way, even if it's just from the egresses or the driveways from MEJ's and the businesses right there? Would that be something the department's considering?
It's definitely something we're considering, and that would be something that Director Karnowski and I have had, especially of late, quite a bit of conversation regarding, you know, downtown, especially as I'm sure you're probably aware more than others with your involvement with the Business 51 stakeholder group meeting, and, you know, what do those one-way pairs, you know, how they impact Business 51, but we want to look at that more inclusively to see what it is. And therein lies one of the reasons to get back up further. I don't know how much information everyone wants. I could talk all night long if you want to get all the details, but I try to give you what I feel, you know, so important without overwhelming everyone. And the reason to even identify that, because it's currently concrete, we're planning to put back just asphalt. We figure that's going to be a lower cost, and why we would maybe look to save the sidewalk on the one side and not replace it. I mean, it's in good shape, but the idea is that, you know, there may very well be additional improvements in this area, and this street may have to change to adjust to what that is. You know, should we make changes to Center Point and Water Street and whatever else, you know, this is just going to be part of that. And so, you know, our goal is not to try to, you know, we're trying to, you know, minimize the impact, minimize the cost, understanding that it probably will never get to the end of its useful life before it's likely to be torn out and replaced. And economically, financially, we don't want to invest a lot of money into something that's not going to get a long life. We're trying to make it more commensurate with what we feel will happen here. So I don't know what those plans are. I do believe something's going to happen here, but that's just a little bit more of what we're doing it. And yes, I agree that, you know, this eventually probably will be a two-way street, but we just have some other things to address before that is likely to happen.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that too, yeah, Director Badoon and I have been working very diligently together to put together a plan to address the two-waying of Clark, Main, Center Point, Water, all that fun stuff. So a lot of it comes down to the cost. We do have an estimated cost to do the studies that run right around $200,000 from some of the engineering firms that we're looking to work with. And unfortunately, we just don't have the budget in 2021 to address that. So we're hopeful that'll come up at some point. But if there's any alders still on this call, know that we are trying. We got to figure out something on the financial side to make that work.
Got it. Thank you, Director Karnowski and Badoon. Other questions for either director or regarding these streets? One thing I'll ask is has the city or is the engineering firm planning to do any parking demand studies on these streets?
Parking demand is something, you know, typically on these local, you know, roads that we don't necessarily do. You know, it's more of a, as you otherwise you can see here, you know, typical, you know, section and approach to doing that. You know, residential areas can have, you know, vastly different, you know, timeframes. The little old lady that lives in the house there, you know, moves out, and the larger, younger family moves in, and demand therefore changes. So it can change overnight. We try to just accommodate with these typicals to allow for parking, and you know other modes of transportation, you know, both sides. So the widths of which are just, you know, typical. We look at the right of way. We try to make changes. In most cases, what we've been doing since I've been here, you know, I find that many of our roads are wider than they need to be. So we've been working to narrow them down somewhat, increase the terrace space that we otherwise have. And I don't think that reduces the level of service to anyone utilizing them, and just makes them safer overall. But as far as specifically parking demand, no, we don't do that, because, you know, we're making a network of streets that, you know, in essence don't need to vary from block to block or street to street so much, you know, to satisfy the needs, and the additional time and cost to potentially do that is really just not done in the industry for this. You know, it's more so to the business 51s and other commercial areas where things can otherwise change, and there may be other parking such as lots, and how do you balance that to meet the needs of commercial and other businesses and such like that.
Yeah, so it looks like it's listed as unrestricted parking. Does that mean it's both sides? And it varies though for each of the design summaries?
Yeah, and I see it already. I got a couple of them that they don't look like they're otherwise filled in. But yeah, in most cases, I think there's just a couple that have any restricted parking on one side, and these streets do allow for parking on both sides.
Okay. So as you know, I live in this neighborhood and I know it very well. So like looking at, for example, 4th Avenue, west of Frederick, you know, it's not part of this reconstruction phase. However, the curb to curb there is 23.5 feet. I think it was mostly narrowed to adjust the driveways on the north side of the street. However, what it did was something really awesome. It made the street more efficient. It slowed down traffic, and it's only parking on one side. So, and then of course you got to imagine how much cost that might reduce with less pavement, less materials, etc. So, you know, since these are all neighborhood streets, I would imagine it's beneficial to look at more streets that just have one-sided parking, especially if those streets aren't getting filled up. I even noticed that 4th Avenue Street does not fill up, and it's a one-sided parking, even during peak moments of the day. So I think it's something we should really take a closer look at.
And I don't otherwise disagree. I think that's a bigger picture item to what we'd otherwise do and how we want to proceed. You know, there's still conversations regarding overnight parking, which could have a significant impact, you know, implication to what we do and how we design streets. Because that conversation continues to be there. You know, at this time, I don't feel it would be prudent to try to restrict that, because that could have a negative impact depending upon the results of overnight parking. And what that would mean to residents at that time if there is a desire to go that route.
It might have a negative impact for parking, but there's already a negative impact for walking and biking. So it's kind of, you know, apples and oranges, I guess. Got to figure out what we want. Yeah, I don't know. Other commissioners, do you have other thoughts, ideas, or questions? Oh, Commissioner Mara.
I think what you really have to look at is what is the character of your street. It isn't so much a parking demand, it's physically what's possible there. How many of the people along the street have off-street parking that's accessible? And how wide are the lots? Because that will really have a lot to do with, you know, what you can do there and what's reasonable. I think that generally on these local access streets, there's not much to be gained with making them wider. In fact, I must sort of think that narrower works very well. We don't have to design every street for a semi to make a corner. Right. Which in the past, we've had members of the council who thought that was a good idea. And so, but I think that rather than being a parking demand deal, it's really a physical reconnaissance as to what you got there. Are there people who really don't have an off-street alternative? And if that's true, you have to provide something for them. Otherwise, you devalued their property. And when you have very narrow lot sizes, you get that there's no resilience as to where people will be able to park, because they have to stay away from the driveways and their parking is limited anyway. But it really isn't a parking demand. It's looking at the physical characteristic of the street you're on and the way that it is developed.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Okay. So next steps, Scott, if you're able to describe that as far as timeline?
The engineer has begun. We had a kickoff meeting earlier this week. We'll probably get to about a 30% design sometime around, I would assume, the end of the year, that Christmas timeframe, at which time we'll probably have a public informational meeting to present things, most likely be virtual. And then to probably work towards final design to happen in the spring, February, March timeframe, where we'll be looking to go out to bid.
Okay.
Trevor, just real quick, Alder Jennings noted
Oh.
that you got a comment in the chat.
I see that now. Thank you. Alder Jennings?
Yeah, thank you. I am speaking from the Alder perspective here. It's parking is part of the Portage County countywide bicycle and pedestrian plan. I'm not sure that this discussion is really should be had. So if you're going off the plan, that's one thing, but I'm a little concerned about the focus on parking in this commission. I just want to make that comment from the perspective of an alder. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Jennings. I'll respectfully disagree and just say that if you have a lane of parking that's not necessary, it's automatically a wider street and less walkable and bikeable. So I'll just respectfully disagree. All right. Thank you, Director Badoon. I think that brings us to our next agenda item. Okay. So item 7, all right. Discussion on city bicycle parking ordinance. So Adam, I don't know if you wanted to take this with starting with your memo or lead into this.
Sure. So as the commission recalls, last time we met, we discussed just a general overview about what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses with the existing bike parking ordinance, and what are some ways that the existing ordinance can improve. Now, one of the documents that was circulated last time we met was essentially a quote unquote best practice ordinance that displayed information as far as the enforcement side of things, as far as the design, specifically the design aspect, what should be the most appropriate design for a bike parking facility. So then included in your agenda packet and on the next slide shows encapsulates some of the topics that we talked about last time within the existing ordinance. So I'm happy to hear any comments, questions, concerns that the commissioners have, and if there's anything that you feel is missing that should be included in the draft ordinance here. And I would say first that this is just a discussion. There's not going to be any action whatsoever taken on this today.
So real quick, just, I don't know if you mentioned it, but did you use the previously approved bike parking ordinance that the former BPAC had discussed and vetted? Was that kind of the template for this, or?
Correct. So that was the document that was passed along last time we met, and the items, the discussions that were most talked about during that meeting was encapsulated within the existing ordinance that we have on file here. So as you can see on your screen.
Okay. I know certain zoning codes allow imagery, and I know a big part of that bike parking ordinance that was already vetted a while ago had images. I'm wondering if that's something that can be included in this.
Sure, that is something that staff can discuss. Now, I will say that one of the things that staff had some discussions in the past was how far do we want to go about with changing the existing ordinance? And what I mean by that is that, for example, last time that we met, there were discussions as far as what should be the minimum parking, bicycle parking facilities offered per land use. Now that's something that staff feels would be a more appropriate discussion at the time when the zoning code is supposed to be rewritten, and that's something that staff can explore and see, is that something that we want to go forward with when that time arises. So I guess in short answer, staff can look at if there's any imagery that would be most appropriate. I would say that the design, how the ordinance is currently structured, that the design elements are pretty cut and dry, that it's pretty easy to follow as far as from a contractor standpoint and as far as a developer standpoint, what should be the most appropriate design of any bike parking facilities.
Okay, Commissioner Fehrenbach?
So apologies, I'm not totally up to speed on everything that's done with this, but my general concern is that in our previous attempts or the previous proposals, it seemed like there were an awful lot of bike parking spaces being required of commercial type buildings and churches and things like that. And, you know, I think the main thing, we have to make it easy enough for facilities and organizations to comply by just starting out with just getting a couple of compliant bike racks out there. You know, get rid of the grid racks and just allow people to get in affordably with just a couple of racks at any public building that needs them. I'm worried that the ordinance might be too much, that people are just going to say, well, we can't do that. So I want to make sure that it is approachable for businesses and organizations to comply.
Correct. And I would say that how the structure is now and how it's proposed is not going to change with regards to minimum parking facilities required, that you're still going to follow, as you can see on the top of the section here, about providing more than 20 but not less than 100 vehicular parking spaces would determine how many bike parking spaces would be required. So that the component of requiring a minimum amount of parking stalls or bike parking spaces, that's not going to change at all, at least with this proposal in front of your screen now. It would be more so focusing on specifically about the design aspects of it, and then talking about what would require, in what instances would bike parking requirements have to be met. And so, for example, as you can see on your screen, the construction of a new building. Any new building that's constructed now would have to adhere to the existing bike parking requirements.
Commissioner O'Meara?
I think I would concur with Adam. We are not requiring people to come up to code until they're doing something pretty major, at which time the bike parking becomes a relatively inexpensive afterthought. Construction of a new building, the bike racks are not going to be a major component. If you're going to have a addition or alteration of an existing building, it depends upon how reasonable the zoning administrator is being, but it'd have to be pretty much for you to say you got to put in more. And reconstruction of a parking lot, on most of the things you're talking maybe one space difference. I think we have to look at replacement of existing bicycle spaces. We may just say that put in something that says you're not going to put in less than presently exists unless you already have more than is required by the ordinance. Something like that I might do. But for the most part, we'd be very reasonable in not coming up to somebody who's been doing business on Main Street for 50 years, and we're saying now we're going to force you to build something new that you didn't plan on. We're not doing that. So I think we are in pretty good shape. I think the only thing is, on the replacement, I think we have to make it clear that you won't be required, if you're doing a replacement and upgrading the racks, that you'd have to put in the same amount that you had before, or you only have to put in the same amount. If you had spaces for 6 bikes and the ordinance requires 10, we're going to allow you to upgrade it to 6 bikes.
Is it upgrade the style? Like upgrade the parking?
The tire bender racks take up lots less space, but take up lots less space than a compliant rack.
What?
The tire bender racks, their assumed capacity is lots
Ah.
more than compliant racks.
Good clarification.
So what you're going to do is you're going to make it that people will go out of their way not to replace the compliant racks if you force them to come up and get more. So I think that we have to maybe massage that so that we make it that there is an incentive for people to upgrade.
So you're mainly suggesting replace within the same footprint, right? Or a similar footprint?
Something like that. There are different ways of doing it, but yes, I don't want it to be a deal that we are requiring something that means that we encourage people to keep the old stuff just because they can't comply with the new.
Sure. Makes sense. Other commissioners have feedback or questions?
So, Trevor,
Yep,
Chairman
Director.
Burke. So just a few things relating to the what I'll call the non-compliance or the grandfathered status. So if an existing business right now, a good example of this would be like ADA stall requirements. If they resurface a parking lot and they originally didn't have the proper number of ADA stalls, staff makes them through the resurfacing, retrofit the parking lot to add however many van or car stalls for ADA requirements.
Right.
I kind of attributed this to the same thing. You know, long-term goal is compliance with the code. Therefore, if you're going to resurface the parking lot or do anything, reconstruct it, restripe it, whatever else, we do want to encourage them as much as possible to bring it up to current standards. And so that would be something that we typically do. It is a zoning permits required when you resurface or reconstruct a parking lot to bring what I'll call the non-conforming parking lots out of non-conformity and into conformity. And this would be part of that. So as long as we keep an eye out, I think there's a way for us to enforce it.
See, I agree with it. The only one I was talking about was replacement of existing bicycle parking spaces. I think that if you redo the lot or you're increasing the size of your building, you should have to come up to the number. It's when somebody decides that they're going to replace an existing bicycle facility as a standalone project.
Oh, you're saying like the bike rack itself?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
I have
University
no
would be a good
problem with
example.
saying that if you're gonna do a capital improvement to your building or put in new parking lot, you got to come up. But it's the replacement of existing bicycle facilities. I don't want to get it that we say that. Why would you want to do it? Because they're going to require so much that you can't reasonably do it.
Right. Good points. Commissioner Brown?
I just have a question about along Main Street. Are the shop owners responsible for having the bike racks there, or is the city?
City.
The city is also, those who are within the central business district zoning are exempt from minimum parking requirements. So we don't even, I would argue that they are exempt from bicycle parking requirements, but we do have some, via this proposed ordinance, non-conforming bicycle parking structures that would have to be brought up to code if we were to replace them.
Right.
You also have not very many bicycle parking spots.
Supply?
I don't know. Trees work pretty well to.
I do trees. And I do fences. I do trees. I do, but for a standard, we don't, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Good points. Good points. Any other questions or comments, feedback regarding this edited proposal? Okay, so Adam, this will come back to the commission. I imagine from this video and minutes, there'll be other edits. And then could that potentially be our final look for recommendation?
Correct. I can, next time that the commission meets, this would be essentially in finalized draft form. And then should the commission choose to approve it and move forward with that, then that would be the decision up to the commission. And then we'll follow through the chain of approvals as far as going through plan commission and common council after this commission would approve this.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to the next agenda item, and that's the discussion on signage along the Green Circle Trail. And Commissioner O'Meara, did you want to go ahead and reference your memo?
Yes, I sent, I have had comments from people, and I don't get very many comments as a member of this commission, but I have had ones about people are concerned, especially on the Green Circle Trail along the river, that people come on bicycles who are on the trail on that section between the, especially between the two boat ramps, are driving too fast for the amount of pedestrians that are promenading on there, and it's all along there. And sometimes you just shouldn't be on it. Like when they have something going on in the park, if you're riding on it, it's kind of hard to maneuver. And I was, Schmeekley Reserve has these signs that say this sign is in poor shape, and they all were because they've done a controlled burn underneath them. But it says that you'll drive slow, and I would say yield to pedestrians. The DNR has the same thing on their trails. They have those signs.
Okay.
Slow down and yield to pedestrians. I think that it's something we have to look at. And when I talked about the one that goes from the hilltop to Green Avenue, the problem with that one is you have people who walk on. There's quite a bit of walkers, and people on bicycles. At least I can easily get to 40 miles an hour on that if I want to.
It's a fast trip.
And there's no real place to bail out on that segment. You're either going to go into the street or you're going to go down the embankment.
Roll down the hill, yeah.
Or get pinched on the bridge. And so on those two areas, I think to just give some sort of little reminder sign that this is a shared path with pedestrians. Please be slow and yield to pedestrians. That's all.
Yeah, very valid point to bring to the table. I'll mention from my experience, I used the Piffner Park section of the Green Circle Trail multiple times per week. And yeah, sometimes you'll see or witness someone flying on a bicycle. And, you know, a lot of times it's respectful with a bell or whatever, but all it takes is one little kid. I have two of them, so I'm very wary of that. To step in the wrong spot at the wrong time, they'll get hit. And that's just one thing, one scenario. So I totally agree. This is something to look at. Other commissioners?
Alder Jennings has a comment.
Yeah, Alder Jennings.
Sorry, I guess I'm stepping in front of other commissioners.
Oh my gosh. Oh no. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if you spoke with the Green Circle Trail about this. This really is they have a fantastic board. They know, they have the pulse of this trail. They know everything about it. So once again, it seems like you're kind of bypassing chain of command, if I can say that. But did anyone talk with the Green Circle Trail? It's really their thing.
I haven't, and certainly the segment going to the hilltop is not Green Circle Trail. And I think that I would talk to the park board before I talk to the Green Circle Trail on the deal that's going through both of our parks. They defer now. It's really a park path that we're allowing the Green Circle Trail to map on. The city is the one that's responsible for that trail. We do the maintenance.
You gotta understand they do all the maintenance, not all of it, sorry, but a majority of the maintenance through their budget. So it's kind of more of a partnership, I would say.
The Green Circle Trail doesn't do any of the maintenance on the area that goes through the two parks. The park board does.
Okay. I'll
And
stand corrected.
the Green Circle certainly doesn't do anything on the section from the hilltop to Green Avenue.
Is that city as well?
Huh?
Is
Part
that
of
city,
it is. Part of it
city
also
maintained?
is Park Ridge, just
Okay.
the end. But these are things that the city is, it's the city's responsibility on these two segments.
Well, to Alder Jennings' point, I would suggest reaching out to them anyway to get
I
a
would
better.
talk to them, but that's why I brought it to us first,
Yep.
because we're the ones, the budget's gonna come out of the finance committee.
Sure. Other commissioners on questions? Director Karnowski, did you have anything?
No, I think this is one of those really interesting partnerships, and the Green Circle is one where we have to find the balance between the city, the county, the Green Circle Trail Committee, the Parks Department, the County Parks Department. And so, yeah, I think it's an important piece to bring up. I think that there are other avenues for us to pursue this, having conversations with Green Circle Trail, having conversations with the Parks Department on placing signage, and not necessarily within the purview of this group. And I know I've expressed that concern to Trevor and others in the past, so.
I would concur with all of that. I was bringing up the issue so that it gets discussed in a public forum.
Very well. Just a side note, I almost think it could be, take on more than one message. Essentially, it could be like a welcome sign, welcome to Piffner Park kind of thing. If you're entering, say, from the Clark Street Bridge side. So it could be something like that. All right. So Commissioner Merrill, I don't know if we wanted to approach the Green Circle Trail Board.
What I would propose for action on this is, it wouldn't be a bad idea for us to have a item on our agenda and have a joint meeting with the Green Circle Trail so they can tell us what they're thinking and we can tell them what we're thinking. We're very much in parallel with our goals and the areas we're covering. And I think that's something for us to look at for a future agenda.
Sure, we could potentially put it on as a discussion item again, invite the Green Circle Trail Board, maybe they
I was thinking more of an omnibus thing than that. Say, we would like to talk to you about talking about our roles and what our goals are. We have, as a group, we have not met with them, and I think that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, and at the very least, we can get more education out of that meeting. Sure. Good points. Any other questions, concern, feedback on this agenda item? Okay, so look for this for a future agenda, potentially with Green Circle Trail Board or whatever evolves. On to the next. We have, all right, staff updates. Adam, did you want to lead into this?
I will actually have Director Badun take care of the first two.
All right, perfect.
All right, yeah, I can definitely cover the first two there. So Business 51, we just had a stakeholder meeting a week ago, last week, Thursday, to introduce kind of where we're going from here. Went over the survey results, which should be coming out to the public here soon. AECOM is putting together a summary of that. And then what we're looking from here is we're going to spend some time, with that input and refining the alternatives with the intent to having something out after the first of the year. Most likely we'll have another stakeholder group meeting to present where we are at and present that to the public, and then have our public involvement Q&A sessions probably near the end of January. Overall, and we're still looking, probably taking, well into the spring here to get the recommended preferred alternative out, and then the remainder of the year to get the 30% design for 2021. So that's where we are at the moment. Just kind of working through those, narrowing that down to come up with what we're going to propose as possibilities for the public.
Thanks. Any commissioners have questions for Director Badoon on that agenda item? Or anyone from the audience? Okay, we're seeing none. So Director Badoon, TAP grant update, please.
TAP grant update, yes. So things are otherwise wrapped up. We're doing final quantities and such at the moment. We did identify a couple things we were hoping it was late that might otherwise have been some, minor change orders to things to yet expand on it. We came in under budget with that one. So we can do that. Unfortunately, the weather didn't hold out for us well, and Century Fence fell a little bit behind on other projects as the weather turned poor in October, and they just couldn't accommodate us in moving forward. So we'll probably address that internally next spring and kind of clean up a few other things that we saw we would like to address. I know there was some specific questions related to HH Water Street there that I was asked to address. I guess I wanted to go through that. I thought I otherwise had in the past. If I wasn't clear on that, I apologize. But the long and short of it is that even with the countywide plan and the TAP grant, it became very clear that the application was put together with no coordination with the county, and that may have been even part of my a poor assumption on my part, that when we got farther into the design and I presented it to the Highway Commission, they were very clear that this was the first they were hearing about our intentions. And so what the plan itself otherwise does is take a high level view of it, and it doesn't take into account impacts to traffic on any of these roads within any of the jurisdictions. So I think they're well within his right. We would do the same if we were making impacts like we were proposing on their 4-lane road, to at least evaluate that and study it. The state required us to do it for the downtown area connecting highways on 66. Then the county should be no different. Like I said, we would do different. We didn't have the time, allotted to us at that point in time to complete that. So I talked with the highway commissioner to see about, if we could continue the conversation. He said we did. It seemed more appropriate at that point in time, therefore, to work through that as a separate project outside of the TAP grant and concentrate on what we could, get done that we had the jurisdiction for and control over.
Okay. Two things about that. I'll express again the frustration here. With all the money from the city allocated, all the plans drawn up. It's shocking to understand or try to understand how this was the first time the County Highway Commission understood this project or learned of this project. If you require a traffic study, and anyone can do this that has internet access, if you go to WISDOT's interactive map and look at the AADT, the average annual daily traffic for those corridors, everything's under 9,000. And you look back historically, it's all under 9,000. And it's just kind of ridiculous. I will just say that. It's really frustrating. Ironically, the second thing I want to mention is one of the potential reroutes of bicycles for the Business 51 planning, the Business 51 study, is that corridor. So to think that, hey, maybe we should route bikes this direction instead of use Business 51 north of McDill, that doesn't make sense anymore again. It's because the Bikepad plan had that in there, and the long-term planning of it made a lot of sense. So I don't know, shaking my head. So I apologize to share that, but yeah, it's really frustrating. Other commissioners have questions or feedback on that agenda item? Okay, seeing none, Item 12, update on student capstone. Director Konoski, did you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah. The senior at UW-Madison, her name is Mia. She has selected our project for her senior capstone, which is really exciting. Adam and I were able to meet with her several weeks ago, and we spent, I would say, about 2 hours walking the Water Street corridor between Center Point and Clark, kind of exploring, here are the challenges, here's where we have concerns, kind of take a look at it and see what your general thoughts are. Had some really productive meetings. She began working on her project and is working through some of the goals and objectives, and has reached out more recently to some of the stakeholders that were identified to further understand where they're coming from when putting together her capstone project. So that's coming along nicely. My suspicion is we'll start seeing some draft documents in the coming months, but yeah, I think she's going to do an excellent job taking a look at what the future of that corridor could look like and what the redevelopment of that general area could be as well. So she has a number of tools at her disposal, including the targeted area master plans, PDI downtown plans, among other things. So.
And then, did you have anything regarding UWSP capstone?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So Robin Rothfeder and I have been working on every year the students at UWSP, well, the last few years have done a capstone project. Last year they looked at the convent property. They also looked at I'm blanking on it now. It's just on the west side of the river. That property that's for sale now, and looking at how it could be redeveloped. This year, we decided to throw a little bit more challenging projects their way. So we did have them look at the south, or we're having them look at the south side. And so they'll be exploring near the Knights Inn, the old Shell gas station. I'm encouraging them to look at how they could redevelop that area to include as part of the rail spur, as we have always looked at, the possibility of a commuter trail or commuter train and rail system, if that could be incorporated. So, and what the redevelopment of some of that area on the south side could look like. So typically those occur in the spring. That's part of the spring capstone project that the outgoing seniors will do. So last year they presented to us via Zoom. I assume this year will be relatively the same, but you folks should be able to receive an invite to those presentations when they're ready.
Cool, thank you. Any questions for Director? Commissioner O'Meara? Oh, you're muted.
The mute got you.
Has there been any further discussion on whether we're going to do snow removal on the Green Circle Trail along the river?
That would be a separate agenda item. So it's a bit out of order. Sorry, Chairman. I just had to step in for just a moment there.
Oh, that's okay. I think that would be on a future agenda, Commissioner O'Meara. I had brought that to staff, and I think there's more internal discussion needed. I think that's what I came away with.
Correct. Yeah, we have reached out to the Parks Department, and we are working through a few things. So more on that when we have a more solid answer.
That's fine.
Thank you. 13, the ADA transition plan.
Yeah, so as the commission recalls, I believe we talked about this once a few months ago, but initially, just to sum up this discussion, so this is a type of plan that staff will have to have internal discussions in the coming months to determine essentially the feasibility of it. Is this something that the city would want to go forward with? So I did include a hypothetical example of a ADA plan in the agenda packet just to give a sense of the depth and gratitude of the plan itself. Now, obviously they come in different ways, shapes, or forms. But like I said, that'll be something that staff will have a discussion with in the coming months to determine whether or not this will be something that we go forward with.
Okay, great. And just so people are aware, it is directly from the bicycle pedestrian plan, so it's just not coming out of thin air. So potentially does fall under our purview, and hopefully we'll have a good discussion in the future. Any questions, commissioners? Okay, item 14, summary of the bikeped count for 2020.
All right, so hopefully you all can see it, but here's a chart that one of the commissioners who spearheaded this, Commissioner Finn, she created this chart showing the total number of bicyclist counts, pedestrian counts, and then other for the intersections that were identified and included within the bike and ped count. So I just want to say, just first off, I want to thank all the commissioners who partaked in this. Obviously, Commissioner Finn, Commissioner Fehrenbach for taking more of the lead approach on spearheading this, and we're doing more of the behind the scenes approaches to getting this together. I want to thank all the volunteers who spent a few hours back in September, I believe, to take part in the count. So as you can see here, there's the numbers for the counts for all the intersections counted in 2020, and then likewise 2 years back as well, to help gain a little perspective of what changes arose. Now, I would say there's two main takeaways that overall why staff was interested in having a count to begin with. And first of which is determine, what are the impacts of any recent bike lanes that were implemented on some of these streets and intersections, or even within the past year. As you can see, some of these intersections have had bike lanes incorporated relatively recently. So staff overall was interested in knowing, did the adoption of these bicycle lanes have an impact on bicyclist counts and just overall pedestrian usage along these intersections as well. And now secondly, and obviously this should come as no surprise to anyone, but what impact did the pandemic have and is still having on biking usage and pedestrian usage on some of these intersections? Now you can see that most of these intersections, the count has been a lot lower than what it was in 18. Now, obviously, pandemic is one factor, another factor being that there was no school on the day that the count was held. And obviously with UWSP, with a lot of the classes being taught online or in a hybrid setting, that would impact some of these intersections more than others. For example, some of these that are just naturally positioned a lot closer to campus than others. So overall, staff's perspective is that, I know we've had this discussion a few months ago as to, how do we want to have a count, and if so, how useful will the data be? And overall, our final determination made was, any data collected is good data. Obviously there's some questions. There can be some questions as far as the accuracy of it, the validity of it, but nonetheless, any data that's collected would have some sort of value that the city can use in making any future decisions down the road amongst the urban planning side of things, and then for Scott as well in public works. So I guess I don't know if there's any comments that Commissioner Finn would want to make since like I said, she spearheaded this.
No, I think the chart shows all the information that we need now at this time. So I'm good.
Well, I'll just echo what Adam said. Thank you again, Commissioner Finn, as well as Commissioner Brown helping out with Commissioner Finn's efforts. So thank you for doing that.
I have one.
Commissioner Fehrenbach? Yep.
Yeah. Obviously, as Adam said, there were just a lot of variables this year with the pandemic that makes a difference. But the one that just jumps out at me is Minnesota and Stanley, where everything else is down. Minnesota and Stanley is up significantly. And that just really jumps out at me as the one really striking bit of data here.
It's interesting. You're a
The other thing is there's
statistician, right?
Yeah, there's still a significant pedestrian and bicycle demand, even with a pandemic and no school. And I think that's important to bring up too.
Well, I took a ride that day and went through, went around town. I was really impressed with how many people were out and about just on foot and bike, despite all the issues. So, yeah.
Commissioner Finn?
Yes, and remember that intersection also is right by Schmeekley Reserve, and Schmeekley has been, I've walked, that trail for years, and I think that's when there's not much else to do. The reserve has been really popular, and perhaps it has something to do with how near it is to Schmeekley and Jonas Lake.
Right. Good points. Any other feedback or questions about the Bikepad count for 2020? I think we have, there's no commissioners.
Alder Jennings does have a comment in the chat box as well.
That's where I was headed. Yep, Alder Jennings.
Yeah, first I just really wanted to thank Commissioner Finn and Brown for the work you did on this. I know it's just a ton of work and it tends to lead to burnout. So I hope the commission doesn't get burned out on this. I think these data are hugely important and I really am grateful. It was a quiet day overall and certainly what jumps out to me with these numbers, and I'll have to defer to Commissioner Fehrenbach on this, but I'm really surprised at how high the numbers are. On that day with school, there was like no one on campus. Sometimes the activity level is influenced by events that are going on in the city when the count has been done before. So I'm actually really pleased with these numbers. It was a super quiet day. So I think that says something as well. And I don't know if Commissioner Fehrenbach shares that thought at all, other than beyond just that one intersection. But in summary, thank you all. Great job. I appreciate it.
Well, I will comment that every year that I ran it, whoever watched Franklin in Division just came back shaking their head saying, somebody's going to get killed there. And this is probably the first year that we didn't hear that, because that is the intersection that was down so much, because that's where the students are coming into and away from campus so often. And, just that population is just really down this year. So yeah, it was very different in that regard.
Good point. Thank you. Any other feedback, questions, concerns? Okay, anything else from staff for update? Okay, well, looks like that concludes our meeting. We'll adjourn here at 4:49. Thanks for sticking with us, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.